What a beautiful day to read a book. So, however it's so bright, I'm gonna have to use my handy dandy sunglasses because The Farthest Away Mountain is a blindingly exciting book. We left Dakin. Were in the clutches of Graw, and he was flapping around inside the actual mouth of the cave. Dark, she could hardly see anything, and then he dropped her. And then we went on spring break, and there she was, still falling. Well, let's catch her. The Blue Bead, chapter 13. The fall was horrible, but short. She landed on a hard stone floor. For a moment, she lay still, stunned, but only by fright. The magic of the Lithy Pool had protected her from every other hurt but that. I really must try to be a bit braver, thought Dakin shakily as she sat up, especially now. I must trust the Lithy Pool water. She stood up. It was perfectly dark. She could sense that she was in a huge, very high cave. She knew this by the way every little sound she made echoed. Also, she could hear Graw, his wings making their uncanny whistling sound, and his beak clacking high, high above her. And now she heard another sound. Actually, she felt it first, in the stone under her feet, the trembling of the mountain as Drakemag walked. She fumbled in her pocket and found the troll's little blue bead, or sweet, or whatever it was, and popped it into her mouth. It had a strong, rather disgusting, but healthy sort of taste, like disinfectant. Now she could see that the cave was growing lighter. A flickering light spread across the great rocky, rough-cut walls. Thud, thud, thud. And with each footfall, the light of the giant candle grew nearer and lit up more of the cave as the ogre came along a vast passage toward her. I don't suppose, thought Dakin, trying not to quake, that the magic water could protect me if Drakemag actually stood on me, so I'd better run and stand against a wall, not here in the middle of the floor. She quickly did this, but Graw, hovering above in the eerie blackness, saw her run and, thinking she was trying to escape, swooped down on her with a harsh cry. She ducked into a crevice of the rock, and the tip of his black wing just brushed her face as it wheeled by with a swish of air like the sword stroke. "Oh!" Dakin exclaimed. Its wing had a horrid smell, like something dead. Dakin put up her hand to wipe away the cold, cold touch from her face, and got the shock of her life. Her hand was transparent. Even as she stared at it, it faded altogether and disappeared. For a second, Dakin thought, well, it would be hard to describe her thoughts, actually. Had she gone blind? But no, the walls of the cave were still clear before her, clearer and clearer, in fact, as the ogre's candle approached. How then could she not be able to see her hand right before her face? She looked down at herself, but there was no herself. She was there, she could breathe, she could feel the cold floor under her bare feet, she could touch her face and her hair and feel them warm and real, and yet she was not there, for she could not see any part of her body or clothes. Suddenly she understood. The troll's blue sweet, which he had told her would protect her from Drakemag, had made her invisible. But she had no time to think any more about it, because now Drakemag himself had come into the cave. He was so huge that she couldn't see him properly. One of his great booted feet thundered down right outside her crevice. She could have reached out and touched the side of it, but she was only as tall as the heel of the boot. She could look up and see part of the rest of it, but not much more than that. The ogre himself nearly filled the whole cave, and when he spoke, no thunder that ever rocked Dakin's house on a stormy night had ever sounded half so loud and boomy. She had to put her fingers hard in her ears to prevent herself being deafened by the vibrations, and still she could hear his words quite clearly. "Did you get her, Graw? Where is she?" The winged one squawked shrilly and tried, perhaps, to fly down to where Dakin was hiding, but Drakemag's enormous bulk blocked the way. "Well, don't just flap around my face, you stupid brute," roared the ogre. "Show me, can't you? Oh, if the master is clever enough to bring a thing like you back to life, couldn't he manage to make you talk too? He gave me a voice and a brain and a bit of sense in my ouch. Dakin felt the whole mountain jar. It was like an earthquake. She fell over. She guessed Drakemag must have bumped his head on the roof of the cave. And come to that, why didn't the master make these caves bigger before he put me into them? He roared. That's the 3rd time in 2 days I've banged my head. The whole lot'll come crashing down one of these times. Crashing right down, you'll see. And then where will the master be? Lost in the rubble, and serve him right. Serve him right. Come here, you. Stop digging your stupid talons into my shoulder. Can't you see I'm stuck? Wait a minute, I'll sit down. There was a lot of heaving and grunting and puffing. Several bits of rock, boulders really, came tumbling down, and again the whole mountain seemed to shudder and shake. The light, which had been partly blocked off, now became brighter, and when Dakin looked out of her crevice, she saw, instead of the side of the ogre's boot, a vast area of coarse green cloth, which must have been a bit of Drakemag's trousers. He was sitting down on the floor, and now Gra was swooping about, making horrible shadows in the flickering light of the giant candle, still trying to get down to where Dakin was. But it seemed the ogre hadn't got a very good memory, or maybe his knock on the head had made him forget about Dakin, for instead of looking for her, he caught Gra in his hand and said, "Now keep still, you brainless bird or lizard or whatever you are. You're getting on my nerves, bashing around me like that. I want to think. Oh, my head. How I hate this job. If you don't stop trying to peck me, I'll give you such a thick ear. Wonder when the master'll be back. Always looking for that stupid ring, as if it mattered. If Prince Rally can't be married without it, as if I cared about that, and it's lost, what does it matter if the troll has it, or if the master has it, or if it's at the bottom of the lily pool? I bet that's where it is, if you ask me, and even he can't get it out of there." The ogre gave a chuckle. "Ho, ho, wouldn't I like to see him try? Even I had to build a house around it because I couldn't stand the sight of it, and I'm not half as bad as he is. I bet he'd burst into a million pieces if he so much as dipped his little finger into it, and if he jumped in to look for the ring. Wow, he'd just go poof, up in a puff of steam. Poof, Gra, poof. A couple of bubbles, that'd be the master. You wouldn't like that, would you, Gra? If the master went poof, you'd probably go poof too, or turn into a fossil, ho, 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 while I stood up here on top of the mountain laughing my head off. And what do you think I'd do next, Gra, when you and the master had gone poof? Well, first of all, I'd knock the top clear off this mountain so I could stand up straight without banging my head. I'd knock it off and fling it down there into the valley, right into that little village you can see down there. I'd wake 'em up. That's something unusual was going to happen. They'd look up, and then they'd see me with my head sticking out of the top of the snow." He sat there chortling contentedly for a few moments, and then he went on. "What I'd do is I'd dig up old paint pots out of her hole in the ground, and I'd make her scrape all those awful colors off the snow. I might even make her eat the lot. Caterpillars, hot snow, sticky snow, the lot. The sight of so much whiteness would be the finish of her. I wouldn't wonder, mad old hag that she is. Then I'd climb out. My shadow would go right down the mountainside and fall on that village. Wouldn't they just die of fright when they saw the size of me? Ho, 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 Grokkins. How they'd shriek and run, and I'd crash down the mountain in a few big strides, and I'd scoop them all up, little ants that they are next to me, and then I'd... The happy, excited voice of the giant petered out. It was as if he'd run out of ideas. He paused for a few moments and then muttered, "Well, I don't know what I'd do with them, really. I might just sort of... No, that'd be no fun. Oh, they're so small, no good for slaves, no good for playing with or keeping in cages. What's the use of them? I don't know." The muttering died away, and after a short while there was a trembling thud as the ogre's head fell back against the wall of the cave, and then great thunderous snores began, which made all the mountain rumble. That is the end of chapter 13. Join us back again for more another day.